What is the difference between a good advocate and a superlative one?
I think it goes back to your question about the written product. I think clarity, simplicity, honesty. I think that we've been doing this. I've been up here 15 and a half years. You've seen just about everything. You've seen just about every kind of case. First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, substantive due process, procedural due process, procedural cases. You've seen it all. And you're now beginning to have so many of your precedents cited back to you. So when someone comes up and they try to give a cute argument, you're talking to the wrong people, because the arguments that you're being cute with have their basis in things that we've written, or at least we've thought about it probably a lot longer and more depth than most of the advocates. So I would say honesty, and then some flexibility. Some people come up and they have either on a piece of paper or notes that are rigid, or they have it in their mind. If you look at the really good advocates, they know what their 2 or 3 major points are, their central arguments are, and maybe something that they need to tease out a little bit from the briefs, and they stick to it. And they can take you right back to it with all the cacophony. The chief was like that as an advocate. He was the best. He was very smooth, unflappable, always prepared to the nth degree. Bob Bork was like that, just unbelievably good. Rex Lee, another. And of course I didn't see Rex Lee that much, and there are others that are good examples. But again, I go back to what I say: honesty, simplicity, clarity, flexibility.
How does a lack of integrity manifest itself in an advocate's argument?
Oh, let's take a simple example. Case A almost gets you through your argument, but it doesn't quite get you there. Well, we know that. That's why we granted cert. If you say to me, this covers it like a blanket, or this covers it, we know that's not true. That's not advocacy. That's just being dishonest. Now, let me give you a way to say it. The logic of that covers this, and let me show you how. In other words, now you're telling me, here's a way to write this opinion, just extending this a little bit. Or we ask you, do we have to extend this precedent to cover your case? You say no. Well, we didn't grant cert for you to say no. You say yes. But it's an easy extension, and it's a logical, rational extension, and it's pragmatic for these reasons. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference. The first answer, no, you don't need to extend it. It's clearly wrong. And it's a tinge of dishonesty. And so you lose credibility. And you don't want to lose credibility. That is the one thing you bring with you. And if you lose it, it's hard to get it back. I remember when I was arguing cases, I was standing before the court, and we couldn't confess error. And there was this young man, this prisoner, filed a writ. He filed a motion for a writ of habeas corpus ad testificandum to get out and testify at something that was important. And it was important. And the judge asked me, he said, now, do you think it's right that this writ was denied by the court below? And I said that we cannot confess error. And then I began to give my explanation. I said, however, if it were up to me, the writ makes sense. But it is not up to me. And you could see him almost, again, relieved, wink, and sit back. And of course the writ issued. It was nonsensical for it not to issue. But I had a duty not to confess error. But I was not going to come up there advocating with everything in me that it should not issue. Because I was going to appear before that judge again. I was a repeat arguer up there, so advocate up there. So, I mean, you need your credibility.
Are there ways in which you've seen oral advocates actually enhance their credibility?
Oh, yes. Simply by saying this, admitting that there's a flaw someplace. However, I think when you give ground, you gain credibility. When you hold ground that you don't deserve, you do not gain credibility. You lose credibility.
But a lot of advocates haven't learned to figure out what they can concede, have they?
No, but that comes with experience. I mean, how do I figure out how to concede that, and a way to concede on the writ, the habeas corpus writ? I mean, I think that the really good advocates, the people who've been up here many times and before the courts of appeal, which I think is a great training ground, because there's only 3 on the panel. I think it's a much better forum to really practice your art, or your craft. I think you learn over time. You gain kind of a comfort with it. So it's like a jazz musician or something. You get a feel for it. You don't just know the law, but you have a feel for it. You have a feel for what the judges are trying to do. And then you know that where you can give a little ground without giving up your case.
And it's probably like public speaking. There's no substitute for doing it.
That's right.
To learn.
Well, you know, when I at the risk of boring everyone, I was sworn in as a member of the Missouri Bar on September 14, 1974. And I argued my first case before the Supreme Court of Missouri on September 17, 1974. I have no idea what I said, but it was a wonderful experience because I panicked, I was sick, I went through all the emotions, and I learned how to control it and do my job. And then probably around the 30th argument, of course I always was nervous. I always stayed up late to prepare, and I had a system for preparing, but what I learned, the antidote for nervousness was preparation and confidence that I am prepared, that I know the facts, that I know the law, and that I have some notes that are not rigid, they're flexible. The other thing, as I said, I go back to your question. Remember, honesty and credibility go hand in hand. I had appeared before the court so often that they knew me, and they had confidence that I would not say anything that I didn't truly think was accurate.
Did you have any particular mentors in Missouri when you were at the AG's office there?
Not really. We were understaffed and overworked, and we were running all over the place. Probably the greatest mentor, and I'm just thinking, the reason I know this is because I spent way too much time on this memoir stuff. I'm not doing this again. This is why you should only have one life to live. You only have to write one memoir. But I think Senator Danforth, and the longer I think about it, and the more time passes, the better he looks. I mean, he has aged well, or he has done better in time for me. It's just like a fine wine. The more I think about him, and I met him, he was in his 30s, I was in my 20s, I was cynical. But you know, he never asked us to do anything that wasn't honest. He never asked us to do anything that was not on the up and up. And he never was overbearing. Politics never came before the law. I had one incident. I had a case that I had tried and was arguing on appeal involving the low-numbered license plates in the state of Missouri. That's before they became these vanity plates that you paid for. The very prominent people had them in the state of Missouri. And they were arguing, of course, that they had a property right in these plates because they'd been handed down in the family. You'd think that they were Cornhusker season tickets or something. But they brought a lawsuit, and they were very serious about it. And Senator Danforth came to my office, and he said, what's the story on this? The Director of Revenue had complained that this was going to be a problem if we lost it. And I explained to him what the legal implications were. And he said, Clarence, This may be good law, but it's bad politics. Well, he took the files overnight, brought them back, and never said another word. That's as close to any involvement on his part. And I thought that was just a wonderful moment. So if you want to talk sort of about a mentor who sort of teaches you how to do the right thing, even when it would be attractive to kind of move things in a different direction, there he is.
But you really, it was kind of just learned by, it sounds as if it was more learned by the seat of your pants. You're handling lots and lots of cases, and you're out there just arguing 3 days after being admitted to the bar. What is your advice to a new member of the profession who believes that he or she is not getting the kind of guidance from a senior lawyer that he or she might have?
You know, I think you can find people, even people not in the profession, who can talk to you about honesty and about things of character. The irony is, years later when I was on the Hill, I used to talk to a janitor frequently. There are all sorts of people. And I think that when you take your first job, and, you know, of course, it's totally fortuitous that I got to work for Senator Danforth. Someone said, well, why'd you go to Missouri? I said, well, it was the only job I had. And so that made the choice easy. And it's just fortuitous that if not providential, that I had a chance to work with him. But I think that if you have choices, work for the person, not the job. That would be my recommendation. Work for good people. Work for honest people. And I remember years later I did something that I sat down and I looked 5 and 10 years out. You know, people who were 5 or 10 years ahead of me, and said, did I want to be like that person? Not much older, not somebody who's 70 or 80, but 5 or 10 years out. And that would be the person that I would seek advice from.
But you've seen a lot of these lawyers. Presumably you've even seen former clerks of Supreme Court justices get into this stream of litigation practice, and they're on the treadmill that they're expected to be on. Mm-hmm. No getting off it.
Well, you can always get off. You don't have to stay on. You know, we all had to make those choices. And some of us chose to get off for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to get into all the details, but there were things that were more important than, say, some of the financial rewards. And certainly, in my opinion, I vowed years ago I would never make a Faustian bargain and never trade character for a few dollars.